Welcome to Alternative Indian Media. In this episode, we will dissect India's foreign policy under Narendra Modi-led BJP government. We will also explore the answer to a very important question: how India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar differs from National Security Advisor Ajit Doval in foreign policy matters. A few weeks back, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has said no to NATO. At least for the time being, Indian armed forces will not be integrated into NATO. Although Dr. S. Jaishankar has understood the danger and avoided a catastrophe by saying a no to NATO, we think this relief would be short-lived. In reality, this no by Dr. S. Jaishankar does not mean anything. It is more of optics, and lacks substance. In fact, India is already pretty much part of Western military bloc. Therefore, External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has made an attempt to portray a neutral face, rather than upholding neutrality in policy matters. To be honest, it is the pro-Western Ajit Doval who calls all the shots in the foreign policy matters. Dr. S. Jaishankar was hired by Narendra Modi in order to merely portray a neutral face and not to maintain neutrality in foreign policy matters. However, in between the years 2020 and 2022, Dr. S. Jaishankar, to a certain extent, tried his best to uphold a somewhat balanced approach in foreign policy matters. However, Dr. S. Jaishankar did not succeed. External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar has been nudged out by India's National Security Advisor Mr. Ajit Doval. Therefore, one can raise a very important question. If India is pretty much part of the Western military alliance, then why did External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar say no to NATO? Well, it is a hollow diplomatic stance that lacks substance. It is a perception management gimmick, designed for the consumption of the Indian people who would think that the ruling political establishment has taken a bold step by adopting a balanced approach in the foreign policy matters. It is just an attempt to stay on the good books of the Russians, at least on the face value. It is a superficial and insincere stance which India wants to use as checks and balances, which would allow the India to flip side, just in case if things go south, and Russia manages to defeat the Western military alliance NATO, which seems quite possible after the failed Ukrainian counteroffensive. So, what is the truth? RSS and the ruling political establishment of India have been implementing the dangerous Palmerston policy. I have already made an episode on this topic, titled Opium Wars, Palmerston Policy, how Brits sowed the seeds of animosity between India and China. I recommend that you watch. For the sake of continuity, I'll give you the summary of that episode in just 4 sentences. 1. Throughout the 18th century and the early phases of 19th century, British would subjugate and torture Indian farmers and force them to grow opium, and then they would sell this opium in China and make huge profit. 2. In this process, India would get ruined and Chinese society would get addicted to opium. 3. Lord Palmerston would take advantage of this situation, combine the European powers under the British command, hire Indian soldiers from British India, use them as mercenaries, wage a series of opium wars against Chinese Empire over a period of 30 years, and subdue and defeat the Chinese Empire. For Palmerston policy is all about using land, resources and manpower of a one great power against the other, plundering both and ruining both in this process, while enriching the British Empire. In summary, we can say that the British first took control of India, then used India's land, resources and manpower to subdue China, while destroying India at the same time. And this is how South Asia was enslaved. Over the next 150 years, West would use this Palmerston policy repeatedly. Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski merely refined and perfected this art. From radicalization of Afghanistan and Pakistan and subsequent Talibanization of Afghan society to the rise of neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine in more recent times is the reflection of same Palmerston policy. USA, Britain and the collective West wants a major conflict in South Asia. West wants to boost their fledgling economy by pumping money into their military-industrial complex. This time, their target is India and South Asia. West wants a war between India and China. USA, Britain and the collective West want to trap India by fomenting a two-front war with China and Pakistan. And at the same time, West wants to subdue Russia, China and Iran at the expense of India. It is this reason why USA, Britain and the collective West wanted to integrate Indian armed forces into NATO. Ajit Doval is a key player in the whole scheme of things, and at the same time, Doval is a weak link in India's national security apparatus. Doval has tremendous influence up on Narendra Modi, and it is the Ajit Doval who might end up driving Narendra Modi into this trap, endangering India's sovereignty and integrity. Narendra Modi understands everything, but he has his compulsions. Narendra Modi understands that his chance of winning 2024 general election in India is dwindling. Narendra Modi understands pretty well that without a military conflict with Pakistan or China, his chances of winning 2024 general election is bleak. Narendra Modi, however, is more comfortable engaging with Pakistan militarily. Narendra Modi might be more than willing to start a limited war with Pakistan, and then the media would be used to convince the Indian population of an Indian victory. Within the corridors of power, people are even discussing that this military conflict might be staged, and it would be more of a drama aimed to fool the Indian society. This military conflict will lack substance, and Indian military won't have any clear-cut strategic objective. The conflict is supposed to serve the political ambition of a political party and its leadership. This would be accomplished through the perception management and psychological manipulation of the Indian masses, in which Indian and Western media would be blatantly misused. Collective West, led by USA, Britain and France, however, has other idea. West wants a prolonged conflict. West wants an India-China conflict instead of an India-Pakistan conflict. Even if an India-Pakistan conflict breaks out, West would like to drag China into the India-Pakistan conflict. A two-front war between India and China-Pakistan axis would serve the interest of the West very well. West wants to plunder India by supplying arms, weapons and military equipment. West wants to squeeze every drop of juice and leave India dry dead. West wants to siphon out money from India and pump in this money into their military-industrial complex. Longer the conflict, it's better for them. In order to achieve this, the collective West, its deep state and its intelligence apparatus will use the Indian deep state. In fact, it is the West that has raised the Indian deep state in collusion with RSS. It is the RSS that has backed the Indian deep state. RSS subverted the Indian statecraft by using Indian deep state and brought BJP and Narendra Modi to power. Indian deep state in collusion with the Western deep state facilitated BJP and Narendra Modi's rise to the political stardom. Indian deep state thrived under BJP and Narendra Modi. And in this process, deep state has become well entrenched in India. And now Narendra Modi and BJP are at the mercy of the deep state. Just like any other deep state, Indian deep state too thrives within the country's national security establishment. Ajit Doval heads India's national security apparatus. Narendra Modi might want a limited military conflict with Pakistan, but Doval may not want that. Doval may want what West wants, that is a military conflict with China or a two-front war with China-Pakistan axis. This would serve 5 main objectives of the West. 1. West would be able to isolate Russia, China, and India. This would enable the West to subdue Russia, China, and Iran at the expense of India. 2. This would also enable NATO to pounce upon isolated Russia. NATO would then try and defeat isolated Russia and disintegrate her. 3. This would allow West to attain dominant position in Indo-Pacific. Following the mutual destruction of India and China, West will have dominant position in the Indo-Pacific region. 4. In short-term, West wants to boost her fledgling economy by pumping money into its military-industrial complex. In the long term, West would like to reinvigorate its economies through the loot and plunder of Russia, China, and India. That is, it wants to bring back the colonial era of 18th, 19th, and early phases of 20th century. 5. This would pave the way for the disintegration of India and total destruction of 20,000-year-old Indic civilization. Therefore, West wants Narendra Modi to start a military conflict in South Asia, and Narendra Modi has his compulsions and obligations. Narendra Modi is more than willing to oblige the West. Only difference is the nature of this military conflict. While Modi might want a limited conflict with Pakistan aimed to serve his political ambition, West and the globalists want a prolonged conflict of much bigger scale. Naturally, question comes, how is it going to unfold? Western deep state and its intelligence apparatus, in collusion with the Indian deep state and Pakistani deep state, might orchestrate a major terror event inside India and set a narrative through the propaganda. Modi government would then use this as a pretext to start a military campaign against Pakistan. West would then drag China into this conflict in order to escalate this regional conflict into a global conflict. Western deep state and its intelligence assets can orchestrate a terror event in India at will, particularly when the big boss of the Indian deep state is a national security czar in India. It might start as a limited military conflict that might spiral into a regional or even global conflict. And in this dirty game, Indian and even Pakistani deep state might collude with the Western deep state and its intelligence apparatus. In summary, we can say that Indian foreign policy under Narendra Modi has become an extension of Western foreign policy, and Western foreign policy is an extension and refinement over the Palmerston policy of Victorian era. This is basically a use and throw policy, and the Indian deep state might end up colluding with the Western deep state to implement this dangerous policy. Like I said before, deep state of any country thrives within its national security apparatus, intelligence and administrative apparatus and military command and control. India is no exception. The Tsar of India's national security apparatus is a tool to implement dangerous Palmerston policy of the West, while the External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar is an instrument of perception management. Dr. Jaishankar may talk about adopting a neutral foreign policy and multipolar world order, and these things sound great. But in reality, India is neither upholding neutrality in foreign policy matters nor it is working towards a multipolar world order. Indian armed forces is pretty much part of Western military bloc, and India has accepted globalists' world order, which is a case of one world government and corporate authoritarianism. China too understands this, and hence 18 rounds of border talks since the Galwan clash did not bear any fruit. China does not trust India's National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, and China understands that the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar is more of a powerless public relations man. China may not be willing to sit back and watch Indian armed forces prepare for a full-scale assault on China. Therefore, China might make the first move in order to preempt an Indian assault by attacking India. Unless Narendra Modi changes his foreign policy drastically, I expect an Indo-China conflict leading up to 2024 general election. In conclusion, adoption of Palmerston policy will make India a dangerous place, put India's sovereignty and integrity at risk, and will endanger the lives of 1.4 billion Indians. It will also put entire South Asia on a volcano waiting to erupt. Thanks for watching this episode. Kindly share this episode and subscribe to this channel.